Welcome in, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. I am your host, Brandon Baker. I'm joined by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. You can find us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast at, under 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. We're brought to you by the Field of 68 podcast network. And we've got some Arkansas basketball to talk about. Not as much good this week as there was last week. Arkansas goes 1-1 this week with a win over Furman and then a bit of a disheartening loss to Oklahoma on a neutral site yesterday on Saturday. And honestly, I think Arkansas is kind of putting themselves in a tough spot at this point in the year. And I talked about it a little bit on my Twitter account yesterday and saw some backlash about people saying that everything is okay. And I kind of wanted to open up this podcast today and just kind of get your thoughts on how things are going for the season and how important metrics are this early. Because right now, we're recording on December 10th, and as of right now, Arkansas is not looking hot in any of the metrics. They're the highest in Ken Palm at number 48, BPI of 62, 112 in the net rankings. I mean, that's a bubble team at best at this point right now, the way things are trending. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I understand that there is a lot of season left, and there are a lot of big games and big opportunities for Arkansas to right the ship. And if anyone is going to do it, I believe that Musselman can do it. My only concern is that this seems like a bigger hole to dig themselves out of than what they've done in previous seasons.
Yeah.
And just because they have done so in previous seasons doesn't guarantee anything with this current roster of entirely new players and entirely new problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that the season's over. Obviously, there's a lot of time left, and I do think that they're an NCAA tournament team. I think that they will be okay, generally speaking, but it's becoming a bigger hole to climb out of, and it's a tough conference schedule that they've got ahead of them. So I just wanted to open up the floor to you guys and ask, how do you feel about Arkansas right now? How do you feel about how the metrics are? Is it too early to be worried, or are the concerns real? Just some questions that everyone is having right now. So, Joey,
I
I'll
mean,
start with you on your thoughts there.
Brandon, I'll hop in here and say it is a long season. There's definitely opportunity to right the ship and get to where we need to be. It's a brand new set of guys. It takes a while to build chemistry, but it's totally valid to have these concerns. And to be fair, I hate to say it, but it's delusional to have the thought process of thinking just because it's happened in years past, it will happen again. That's delusional thinking. That's like saying, okay, the Golden State Warriors won the NBA championship last year. They're going to come back and win again because it's been a trend. We've seen them win X many championships in the last X many years. So it's gonna happen again. That's the same thought process as saying, oh, Arkansas made it to the Sweet 16 last year. They're going to do it again just because that's the trend. That's insane thinking. It's psychotic to be thinking that just because it's been seen in previous years that it will be seen again. You know, there are some very real problems that we've seen throughout these first games that if they're not adjusted come SEC play, Arkansas is going to be in a real bad spot in a possibility of not even making the tournament if these little things like defensive rotation, throwing the ball away, unforced turnovers, offensive execution, if these things are not fixed, we won't make the tournament. And that's just simple facts. I think these metrics are extremely valuable. Whether or not it's this early in the season or later in the season, these metrics matter. They are stone cold facts, and I think they need to be looked at as so.
I agree. I mean, they do matter. Metrics do matter this early to an extent, of course. And I don't necessarily think they have evened themselves out yet. There's going to be a lot of changes. I don't think Duke's going to stay at what they're at Q2 right now. Is that what they are? I don't think they're going to stay there. I think they're going to end up bumping up. I think we're going to move up. But right now, we don't look like a tournament team. We don't look even close to what we did even last year. And I think it's important to know how big of a hole this team has gotten themselves into. I think it's important that Musselman points out their ranking in the net and in all these other metrics because it's more motivation, if anything. If you guys want to be part of history, if you want to be one of the best teams in Arkansas history, like they should be, the talent's there, then you guys have to work for it. You have dug yourself a hole. You have to do what you can to get out of it. And each game from now on, right now, I what we're probably one of the worst teams net ranking wise in the SEC. Is that am I right on that? I feel like for the most part, there's a lot of teams ahead of us.
I think
And
below average or right around the middle of the pack there. Yeah.
okay, yeah. So if nothing else, we have to use every game as motivation from this point on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being in the middle of the pack in the SEC, you have to go in there if you're Musselman and say, "Hey, they put this team ahead of you. Go blow them out. Go beat them." And we have to use that as with as much motivation as we possibly can to finish out the season strong and even have a chance to be in the tournament. Because right now, like I said, we're not going to be in there with how we're playing. So,
Yep. Arkansas is going to have to win some games that maybe right now they're not currently projected to win, and that's very doable. I mean, like we've been saying, we're pretty down on it right now, coming off an emotional loss. But the way things are trending, it's not going well. They're going to have to figure things out and pull out some wins that right now it doesn't look like they're projected to win. I think you open conference play, three of your first four games are quadrant one opportunities. You go 3-1 in your first four games in the SEC, and none of our concerns matter quite as much anymore because you're sitting in a lot better spot. But if you play the way they're playing right now and you go 1-3 in those first four games, that hole is almost insurmountable at that point because of what we've done to this point in the season. So that's really just the point we're trying to make, is that the season's not over and they have every opportunity to fix it, but it's not trending well. Like there are real problems that have to be fixed before we get into the meat of SEC play,
Yep.
or it's just not going to end well. So yeah, the Hogs have a lot of work to do, a lot of games they need to win. And so we'll get into some of the more fine details of what we didn't like this week and maybe some of the things that did go well earlier in the week against Furman and then in this loss to Oklahoma. We'll touch on some of the finer points of those games after a quick break.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
Welcome back in. As we mentioned before, Arkansas goes 1-1 this week. They had a big 14-point victory over Furman, and that win was actually maybe a little bit closer than the final score might suggest. It was a pretty close, almost a single-digit game up until the last few minutes. But Arkansas played very well in the second half, did a good job of limiting Furman scoring the ball after they got off to a hot shooting start. I liked a lot of things that we saw at the end of that Furman game that allowed Arkansas to build that big double-digit lead right before the final buzzer. So some good things in that one, but then they turned around and had just a pretty crushing blow, a loss to Oklahoma. And I say that crushing, it's not the end of the world on the schedule because Oklahoma is a really good team right now. It is a Q1 loss, but combined with all of our other losses that we have, is just really disheartening. It was a game that Arkansas, I think, could have won, and they just didn't execute very well. And I just the thing that is disheartening to me is that we're still seeing a lot of the same issues cropping up. It's not a talent thing. I think Arkansas is talented enough to have won every single game that they've played this year. And I think they proved that against teams like Duke and even in the Purdue game in the preseason, in that exhibition game. They showed how talented they are and how capable they are of winning these games.
Mm-hmm.
It's just small things like not executing on offense, not running enough sets, not communicating defensively. There's just a lot of small things that have been going wrong, and that's where a lot of my concern from is that it's repeating issues that I haven't seen be fixed yet. Doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
they won't be fixed, but that's why it's so disheartening right now. So I just want to open the floor up a little bit to you guys here as well, and just what the heck is going on? I mean, what are you seeing from Arkansas that you want to see fixed? What are some major issues that have been causing these losses? Even if there's something that you like, you want to touch on, go ahead. But Joey, I'll start with you.
Yeah, like I mentioned in our first segment, we've got huge issues that need to be righted. Our defense is so inconsistent. Every now and then we'll have amazing defensive possessions that'll end in shot clock violations or turnovers, fast break points, whatever. But then we'll have possessions where players can just come down and get an easy layup without anyone crashing the paint or any defensive rotation whatsoever. And I think you mentioned it earlier. It's just disheartening. Um, there are some good things that we've been seeing, especially in that Furman game. We definitely saw a better press offense. We saw a little more movement in the press. We didn't get trapped as often. We saw more left to right movement. Saw more guys coming down the middle and asking for the ball. So that press offense was much better. We saw Lawson really step into his role. Lawson was great in that Furman game. I do love Brazil offensively. I think that he is a unicorn offensively and has the kind of capability of being kind of a almost Porzingis like player, who can step out and hit a three, but also he's obviously incredibly athletic that can get to the paint. But he also, on the flip side of that, doesn't have a lot of he can't create for himself very well. So a lot of his buckets are created by either off-ball movement or getting open on a good look. So we saw a lot of good in that Furman game, but we saw a lot of bad in the Oklahoma game. We saw a lot of, especially defensively, we saw a lot of just terrible movement, terrible rotations. And guys, especially, let me just touch on this real quick, especially on the pick and roll. We don't know how to guard the pick and roll. We are overplaying way too much defensively. We're not playing guys head on. We're trying to force in a direction, but we're overplaying that force so much that we're getting blown by and trying to kind of depict which side the pick is coming from. So we'll hedge so hard left and then get blown by right. And it's just little things like that that if they're fixed, and one of the only guys that I've noticed that is consistently solid defensively is our freshman, which Layden Blocker, which is so mind-blowing to me, being so new to the college atmosphere of basketball and being so committed and just a good defensive guy. So I don't, it's hard to kind of pinpoint what exactly is going wrong when sometimes we do things right and sometimes we're just so discombobulated it's embarrassing. So I'm interested to hear what y'all think can be improved defensively, if you can even pinpoint what specifically needs to be improved, you know?
Yeah, I want to jump in for just a second there, Joey, on one of the points you made about pick and roll defense. I think that one of the biggest issues that I have noticed, and I've had conversations about this with some other people as well, just it's not that they don't even know how to guard the pick and roll, it's that they haven't decided how they're going to do it. They
Yeah.
do it differently every time. And so sometimes they hedge really hard, sometimes they double team, sometimes it looks like they want to switch, but I don't think that Musselman has really asked them to switch anything this year. Sometimes they play drop coverage, and it's just the fact that it's different every time forces them to communicate every single time. And guys don't know where other people are going to be. And it can lead to miscommunications and leaving guys open. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of late closeouts on 3-point opportunities. I think that's why sometimes we're getting straight line drives to the rim.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's leaving the roll man open. It's just the inconsistency and the indecisiveness on how to guard that pick and roll, I think, has been a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that point that you brought up. I wanted to expand on that a little bit. Matt, I'll throw it to you for your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I don't think there's a specific thing that Muss can teach these guys, honestly. I think they know what they're doing wrong. is the thing. They know what they're doing wrong. They know what they need to fix. At the end of the day, it's the desire to fix those things, to play like they're supposed to play. These aren't freshmen, other than Blocker, who's getting minutes. These aren't freshmen. These aren't guys that are new to the college game. So it's not a chemistry thing. It can't be, because every single one of these guys have played with somebody new in their lineup, in their rotation, every year they've been in college basketball. It's nothing new to them. And you can use chemistry all you want. Maybe there is a little, because there's so many offensive juggernauts on our team. You can't get something going on offense. But we're lacking effort on both the offensive end and the defensive end. We're lacking discipline, like you guys were talking about with pick and rolls. Like, that is a textbook thing. You need to know how to guard. Either you have to hedge or you have to switch. And you hedge and get over, or switch. One of the two. And I think we're quick enough. I think every player is similar defensively, that they can guard anybody on the floor, other than, we don't want our guards on a post. But switch these guys. If it's a small forward coming in, screening, switch. They can handle it. And at the end of the day, I just want these guys to work. And that's the one difference from this team versus any of the other Musselman teams, is I don't see the same work ethic as I did in previous years.
And Matt, real quick, I do want to hop in. I want to, and this may be more of a discussion between the group as a whole, but I do think that chemistry is an issue for any team. They come in with an entire new group of guys, but and you kind of did touch on it. A lot of these guys that we brought in this year are guys who were the guy on their teams in the previous year. So it's hard coming in with a group of guys that all have the exact same mindset of, I've got to carry this team and score the ball. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. So I do think that the chemistry has been an issue thus far, but just because of all the one-on-one basketball that we've seen. So we have started to write that, and you would expect us to write that after the amount of games that they've already played together. So I'm not gonna say that it potentially isn't a chemistry issue, because I'm sure that it is. But at this point in the season, knocking on the door of SEC play, I think that chemistry should be a lot better than what it currently is.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think chemistry's the issue, though. That's what I'm going with. I think that it is just lack of effort. I feel like we contributed to this as a fan base, that this is the team. These are the guys. And we got so much hype for them. They felt the hype and they're like, oh yeah, we're the guys. And then they go in and they're like, are you the guy? Are you the guy? Are you the guy? And we fixed some of those problems, but it comes down to, you guys just have to work. You just have to work. It's not, I want the ball, I want to score. I don't think anybody is really in that position where they're being selfish for the most part. It's just they don't want to take away from somebody else. I feel it's almost too selfless in a way. And we're just that's why we're moving the ball so much. If we're not getting a good shot, we're just tossing around empty possessions.
Yeah, and I want to jump in there a little bit there too, Matt. Almost exactly what you're saying. I think a huge part of that is that we don't really have a true point guard or true facilitator like we expected to have. We brought in a lot of guards capable of handling the ball and getting their shots off, but right now Devo is the only guy that we've seen actually play the facilitator role and do it well. Ellis has struggled a lot. He's had a lot of unforced turnovers. He's kind of out of control sometimes. He's had some really good games where he goes in and scores a lot. I think he had a game recently where he went for 6 assists and 0 turnovers. Great signs, and we can see that the talent is there, that he's capable of doing it, but he has not lived up to the expectation that we had for him coming in. And so after Ellis, the next guy up is Layden Blocker. And while he has been, as Joey mentioned, phenomenal on the defensive side of the ball, I think he's still kind of getting his feet under him offensively. He loves to crash the offensive glass. He loves to cut. He loves to drive. He does a lot of things very well, and you can see the talent, but he is not a true facilitator at the college level right now like this team needs him to be. And I think that he can be, but we haven't seen it yet. And that combination of Ellis struggling a lot and Blocker still getting used to things, I think that has really bled a lot into not having a true facilitator and not running an offense the way that we feel like we should have seen by now. That I think that, like you're saying, a lot of guys don't want to step on each other's toes, but nobody's acting as the facilitator either. No one is saying, give me the ball and let me create for each other. You got guys like Mark, Battle, Ellis to an extent that are really good, and we've seen them create for themselves. Mark has hit some beautiful mid-range shots off the drive. Battle has gone nuclear for stretches in games, creating for himself. They're all capable, but no one has really taken that role of let me create, give me the ball and let's run an offense.
Yeah.
And so I
And
think that is probably to me the biggest problem offensively from like a technical standpoint, aside from, the effort thing and the scheme thing.
right, and that's what we need. We need motion. There
Mhm.
was no motion against Oklahoma. It was just go in and hope for the best. There were a
Yeah.
lot of shots where we just dribbled up shot, it contested. I mean, Battle shot a couple threes. One he hit, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" But
Or
he
even Matt,
just pulled up.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
You're
off
good,
there, but I'm thinking back to the shot clock violations that we had against
right?
Oklahoma. I'm thinking specifically in the second half where we had 5, 6 seconds left on the clock. Marks all the way out, almost near half court, pulling the ball out, runs to the wing and throws an entire cross court pass over to Davenport for a over the head, last second ditch three that it's just like you said, there's no intention to moving the ball. It's just throwing it hoping that something happens.
Right. And I think that's part of Musselman treats these guys like they're all going to go to the league. I mean, he's an NBA coach. He lets them play like that because that's really how the NBA's played. You don't
Yeah.
see many sets ran in the NBA. There's motion, people cut, but that's because they know what to do. They know to cut. They know to move around like that. But these are guys that we have too many shooters. We have too many athletes to not run sets, in my opinion. Like, run some motion to get a lob up to Brazil and get some hype going. That takes people off. And then Davenport, my goodness, he is a good shooter if he is open. Get him the ball open. Run
Mhm.
some plays, run a double screen, get him up, catch the ball, and shoot. I think we're almost too good of a team in our parts, in certain parts, to not run sets for a specific player.
Yeah.
Like, I get let a guy go for 30, but we haven't seen that other than one game, and that was Mark going for 30, and we lost it still. Run sets, run an offense like we did in Duke, run motion at least. At least. I'm off my soapbox.
I wanted to touch a little bit on Davenport too. You mentioned him in this last game. I actually really liked some of the intensity I saw from him
Yes.
after Musselman got ejected, which is something else we haven't talked about really yet either. Musk got those quick back-to-back technicals arguing with the ref, and I don't know what was said. I don't know if maybe one of their players said something and Musk was reacting, or if it was just about missed calls or what, but
I heard it
Musk.
was Oklahoma's students.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've
Yeah.
I've seen a couple different things. Who knows what it was, but Muss was irate, had to be held back, tossed out of the game. I think there was like 17 minutes left or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And I love the fire. I love that he stands up for his guys. I think in that situation, maybe earning a technical lights a fire under them. I think the emotional outbreak enough to get tossed out of the game was a little too much in that moment. But I don't know. I don't know what else you're supposed to do when you're losing like that. He was pretty pissed about something, but back to Davenport. After Musk got ejected, he Davenport got a lot of run right at the end of the game, and he hit a couple big shots. Was playing really good defense, and he was even creating for himself off the ball a little bit. And
Mhm.
I really liked what I saw from him. I didn't think that we had seen much of that to this point in the season from him. A lot of it had just been catch and shoot threes, and which we know he does very well. But I thought we saw a little bit more of his game in the closing moments of this Oklahoma game.
Mhm.
Obviously, didn't lead to much of a run or anything like that, but I wanted to touch on him and give him the props for playing well at the end there. I think it'd be awesome if we could see more of that from him too moving forward. within a motion offense like we've been discussing.
Yeah.
Get some guys some looks. Maybe and he's a great one, like Matt is talking about, to run him off some screens and see what happens. See if he
Hmm.
gets open. See if he can create something. So
Yeah. Him,
just
Blocker, and Lawson are the three guys that I feel like have been playing with that effort that I want from them. I think those three are like they're there to prove something, it seems like. And that's what I love about those three.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, not a lot of positives from this last game, and it's hard to calm down from that game and realize that there are a lot of opportunities left and a good coach at the helm that I think can make the right adjustments. But it's just like we were discussing earlier, just disheartening to see these issues continue to be a problem.
Yeah.
But I really like one thing that Musselman said from his post-game press conference. I want to bring up real fast. He said, "We're not simply just going to prepare for an opponent for a while." And that was when he was asked about Lipscomb coming up. He said, "We just got to start getting better as a team. We got to focus on us." And I think that's absolutely true because it doesn't matter. We've played different teams with different strengths, but none of that has really mattered to this point because it's the same issues plaguing us against everyone.
Yeah.
When you see the same problems repeating, you got to focus on how you are going to fix that for yourself, not how am I going to stop this other team. You got to stop beating yourself first. Because just like Matt, we talked about earlier, we're capable of winning a lot of these games that we've lost, especially like UNC Greensboro. I think they could have beat Memphis. I think, you know what I mean? If you're sitting here
Right.
right now with two losses to North Carolina and Oklahoma, we're having a very different conversation. It's them beating themselves consistently that has become so disheartening.
Hmm.
And so speaking of Lipscomb, that is their next game coming up. They got a nice little break, a 7-day break between games. I think that'll be really nice for some of these guys, like Mark coming off of his back injury and Brazil with the ankle issue injury that he had. And we'll get into a quick little preview of Lipscomb and talk about that game coming up in a week, right after another quick break. Welcome back in. Like I mentioned before the break, Arkansas gets a nice little week-long break between games, between that Oklahoma loss and their next game against Lipscomb. And even beyond that, this will only be their third game in the last 12 days. They had a 5-day break between their last two games and then a 7-day break between these two. So I think that could be pretty beneficial for guys like Brazil with his ankle injury and Mark with his back injury, and hopefully give Musselman some time to work out some of the kinks we've been seeing, some of the problems we've been seeing. But coming up this Saturday, Arkansas goes to North Little Rock for their game in Simmons Bank Arena, their annual game down there. They play Lipscomb, who is currently 6-5 on the season. And that game this year will be streamed on the SEC Network Plus and on ESPN Plus. I know that it's been an issue in the past for fans. That game hasn't always been streamed, but good news this year. Hopefully, good news this year. Lipscomb currently is number 133 in the net rankings, which is the second best team among the mid-major programs that Arkansas has played so far this year. The only team better was UNC Greensboro, who handed Arkansas a loss in Bud Walton Arena. So definitely not a game to overlook. Definitely something that they've got to be awake and ready for. Also, number 156 in Ken Palm. And North Little Rock just kind of holds some funky vibes sometimes. I know they lost to Hofstra a couple years ago. I think last year against Bradley, it was that game where Nick Smith got injured for the second time and had to miss an extended portion of the season.
Yeah.
And so just, holding my breath, crossing my fingers that nothing weird happens here, whether it be on the scoreboard or otherwise. But always kind of hold my breath when they go to North Little Rock. But I mean, I guess at least we get to watch this year, so that's a positive thing. But like I said before the break, Musselman is adamant in his press conference about Arkansas needing to focus on themselves and not really even worry that much about another team. Obviously, you game prep a little bit. You got to have personnel in mind, but the things that is causing Arkansas to play poorly and to lose games are reoccurring issues against everybody. It doesn't matter who's on the other side of the ball. So I'm really hoping that during this 7-day stretch that he has enough time to really maybe make the necessary adjustments, drill in defensive philosophy on pick and roll screens like we're talking about, maybe put in some more offensive sets now that these guys are more comfortable playing together. I don't know. Maybe that's all wishful thinking, but this 7-day break gives me a little hope that maybe he'll have time to make the right adjustments. Because if there's any coach that can make those adjustments, I trust Musselman to do it. I don't mean to say that we don't trust him or that things are going that poorly, but I'm hoping that this might be the turning point with this big break, even though it's not a huge game in North Little Rock. And so, Joey, I'll throw it over to you for a quick preview on Lipscomb and what you're expecting out of some of those guys.
Yeah, and Brandon, you talk about we need to go into this game and just ready to take care of business and get the job done. That's absolutely true. Lipscomb's a team that they kind of show up for their big games. They can go on big runs. And I want to use their previous game on Wednesday against their in-city rivals Belmont. They were down 16 points with less than 10 minutes to go in that game. They fought all the way back. They took the lead with about 10 seconds left and then ended up losing by a last minute shot by Belmont. But the point being that they can go on those runs and they can, they can do that against Arkansas if we show up lazy. So definitely want to come in and play the full 40 minutes, get the win, get things done. Something that I do want to bring up is they shoot the ball pretty similarly to Arkansas. I pegged these stats before our Oklahoma game, but before that, Lipscomb was shooting 48%. We were shooting 47%. From deep, Lipscomb was shooting 36%. We were shooting 35%. Lipscomb 73% from the line, us 70% from the line. So pretty on par as far as field goal percentages go. They also have a senior guard, Darren Boyd, who is their top scorer, averaging about 17 points a game. He can light up the court. I think early in the season, he dropped 26 or 28 points off 90% shooting. So 90% shooting from a guard is obviously incredible. It's incredible from any position, but definitely want to focus on our defense coming into this game. And like I said, just get the job done. Can't play down to our opponent on this one.
Yeah. And going back to the shooting, 8 different players are shooting better than 33% from the 3-point line, with at least 1.5 attempts per game. And then 6 of them are shooting 36% or better. So knowing Arkansas and their struggles to defend against the three, it's important to recognize that and expect a barrage of threes. And hopefully, like we did against Furman, just withstand it. It's not every single one's going to fall, but I'm sure because of Arkansas being Arkansas, we will be watching a very blessed Lipscomb team from the 3-point line. So they will shoot on us, and we just got to give ourselves a much needed cushion to withstand all those threes, and we'll be fine, I hope. So that's the big thing about Lipscomb is they're going to shoot the ball, and they're going to shoot it well.
Yeah, and Darren Boyd is a big guard. The guard that Joey was talking about, he's over 200 pounds at 6'3", 210 pounds, and he's taken almost twice as many 2-point attempts as he is 3-point attempts, and drawing almost 5 free throw attempts a game. So could be a very physical guard. Something that Arkansas has a lot of guards, but not a lot of strength at the guard position. I think Devo's probably your best bet in terms of just raw strength there, but guys like Mark are a little bit thinner, and Davenport plays more like a guard. So it could be interesting to see. Maybe Layden Blocker gets this assignment. We talked about him kind of having his feet under him defensively. So it'll be interesting to see how Musselman, how he matches up with Boyd, because that could be a mismatch just from size alone,
Yeah.
Right.
And then they've got another couple of guards, 2 more juniors, AJ McGinnis, 6'3", Will Pruitt, 6'2", both junior guards, both averaging double-digit scoring, both hitting well from beyond the arc. Will Pruitt is leading the team in rebounds and assists per game, so that's a very well-rounded guy at 6'2". A good, like I said, another kind of guy that can provide a mismatch. I think a lot of these teams have guys that kind of play unconventional, and players that aren't just your prototypical guys that you would see in the SEC or other big major conferences. So just some interesting mismatches that could potentially be an issue, along with that 3-point shooting Matt was talking about. This is absolutely a game that Arkansas's got to be ready for. We already talked about how this is probably the best mid-major they've faced other than UNC Greensboro. It's in North Little Rock, coming off of a loss. Almost all of these games are becoming must-wins now. When
It's a
they're
can't
not
lose.
SEC.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't lose a game like this after you've already lost to UNC Greensboro. So the intensity has to be there. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. It doesn't matter what arena we're in. You got to come out ready to play. I think Musselman knows that, and I think the guys know that. We just got to see it translate to the court. I think that they know what's at stake, and we just need to see the urgency start to develop now. You can't wait too long until all of a sudden, after you lose your first SEC game and you've just barely scraped by, and now you start to pick up the urgency. It could be too late by then because of
Mhm.
this start that they've gotten off to.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking to just see the urgency picked up a little bit, even if the execution isn't perfect, even if the offense doesn't look great. I just want to see a little bit more effort, like Matt was talking about earlier. Urgency on both sides of the ball, understand what's at stake, play hard, play good defense, give yourselves a cushion, and don't make this more of a game than it needs to be. It doesn't matter that Lipscomb is ranked 133 in the net. Arkansas is clearly a more talented team, no matter what their rankings say. It's just time for them to start showing it.
Mhm.
And I think that's a lot of what Musselman was saying in his quote about focusing on us instead of worrying about the next opponent. And so hopefully he holds true to that, and we see a big improvement on the Arkansas side of the ball from their own execution standpoint and their own energy standpoint. But those are the big keys that I'm looking for in this game, regardless of who plays well for Lipscomb. I just want to see
Right.
Arkansas freaking compete. I want to see
Yes.
them play hard all the way through the game.
I'll go a
Even
step ahead of you. I want to see them blow them out of the water. I don't want this game to be close. Just
that would be
beat them
nice.
and make it to where I could sit back and be happy the rest of the day instead of depressed. All right.
Be
Blow them
much
out of the
needed
water.
at this point. Much needed. Yep, I agree. I agree completely. All right, that'll do it for episode 6, 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget you can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We are 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. We're brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. That's where you can find us on YouTube under the Field of 68. And I've been your host, Brandon Baker. This is Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson, and we really appreciate you guys hanging out with us for a little bit. Until next week, go Hogs.
Thank
Go
y'all.
Pig.